Thank you so much for joining us on our very first Small Business Mastery series at Seed HR. We've picked the hottest topic, I think, to kick us off, which is cybersecurity. And I'm really thrilled to have you here today. The purpose of these webinars is to really introduce you to experts that we trust and we know and we work with within our Seed HR community. Personally, I couldn't run our business without the expertise of others. We're pretty expert in the HR field, but it's so good to have that presence of lifelong learning. I learn something new every day, and I hope that you will take away something from this session and learn something new. A bit about me. My name is Esther, and I'm the co-founder with my business partner, Christy. Christy, maybe you can just unmute and give us a little wave and a hello if people don't know you.
Hi, everyone. I am Christy.
And Christy and I run Seed with another team of 4 other amazing women, and some of whom are on this webinar today, and we help small to medium-sized businesses across Australia build strong and high-performing teams. And as I said, this webinar series is all about giving our small business community practical tools for success. Bit of housekeeping as always. While Evan or I are speaking, if you could just try and keep yourself on mute so we can minimize that background noise. If you know how to use emojis in Teams, it's the react smiley face at the top. If Evan says something you love, you can give him a love heart or a hands up. And you can post any questions that you have as you go along in the chat, or at the end of the session, we've left 15 minutes for you to be able to unmute. We want to make this pretty interactive towards the end. If you've got burning questions or something you want clarification on, you can do that at the end of the session. And we are recording the session as well, just to let everybody know, which will be useful when we send it out to you afterwards. So I'm excited to announce our expert speaker, Evan from Enabla Technology. And what we love about Evan is what it says on the screen. He is a people-first IT partner. And trust me, if Evan can be our managed service provider to a group of HR professionals who aren't always IT savvy, that's what we love about him. Their mission at Enabla is to make technology enablement the driver for positive change. Their approach is a get it done approach. They never stop learning, they keep it simple, and they give first. And I think that's why a lot of the values that we have at Seed align with Evan, and why we use him to provide all our IT support. He does have a degree in IT as well, and he's been doing this for many years. So we're in good hands. So without further ado, I will introduce Evan.
Thank you very much for that, Esther, and thank you everyone for having me. As you said, we do what we say on the label. We help other businesses look after their technology. So cybersecurity is obviously a massive part of our technology journey with a lot of clients that we work with. With our businesses, it's really a case of education to make sure that they understand what cybersecurity means to them as a business owner. As a business owner, it's really about growing your business and mitigating risk. And cybersecurity is no different when it comes to that. So our job is to help you be informed and help you make accurate decisions and invest where needed to make sure that that hard-earned money that you're making isn't going straight out the door to some ransomware attack or phishing attack, as it can so often do. So what is cybersecurity in small business? Essentially, I've put a graphic up there. It's the house analogy because it's such a good analogy to use for everyone. I like to try and describe cybersecurity in the same way that in your house, you lock the windows. You potentially have this surveillance camera in there. You really try to cater for quite a number of things to ensure that your valuables inside the house are looked after. And what you'll find is it's made up of a mixture of preventative measures, identification measures, and reactive measures. So when it comes to cybersecurity, it is no different. In your business, your data is your business. And the worst thing for every business owner is, sorry, Marie says can't display. Ooh. I'll leave that if you can see that, Esther. For cybersecurity, the data really is pivotal to your business. And as a business owner, it's all about understanding what is your level of risk and choosing whether you're happy with that acceptable level of risk. Our job is simply to help you understand it and recommend the strategies to how to mitigate that. Thank you, Esther. So what does this look like in a business? Well, nowadays, phishing still remains the biggest threat to small businesses. Business email compromise is still a massive component to businesses getting hacked and losing funds. I've included there, sorry, so can everyone see the slides?
I think Marie was having issues, but yeah, maybe do a thumbs up if you're okay with the slides. It might just be Marie. Yeah, looks like we're okay.
Okay. All good. So what I've done there is I've included a few screenshots. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre releases a report every year, basically looking at the year that's gone. What have we recognised as the trends in the industry when it comes to cybersecurity? What is the impact to businesses? Where is it growing and changing? And what recommendations can we take from that as small business owners? So when we look at the trends here, we're still seeing significant funds being lost by small businesses. And all too often, we're seeing that this is still happening through predominantly business email compromise, which is that phishing email. Email compromise is still 20% of those threats that are reported. So what I wanted to do as part of this is to touch on a couple of key tips that you can take away from here to make sure that those, I call them high impact areas of the business, are able to be controlled. So what we want to do is make sure that we really cover the fundamentals off when it comes to cybersecurity. The fundamentals will really go a long way to making sure that your security posture maintains with the standards. Tip number one is secure passwords and multi-factor authentication. And what I mean by secure passwords is not having one secure password that you use for every single platform and you can repeat it out for everyone to use. We want it to be something that's unique, random, and not used on all of the same platforms that you go to. So if any of those platforms get breached, there's less chance of any password reuse where people will be able to use your passwords or easily guess them into other platforms. For this, I would typically recommend for people to use something like a password manager. We recommend Keeper, which is a great tool to be able to synchronize your passwords between your laptop, your phones, your tablets, share them with people. It really makes it a lot easier to store your passwords and your 2FA codes as well. And it does it in a secure manner. Definitely worth looking at. On top of that, multi-factor authentication. It's free. There is literally no reason not to be using it. Multi-factor authentication provides another layer of security when you're signing in with your username and password. Make sure you set up multi-factor authentication to go back to your phone with a 6-digit code using one of the apps like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. So there's the added layer of security as well. Tip number 2, use a firewall and endpoint protection. Everyone thinks that just because you have moved your data to the cloud, that there is no need to have security anymore where your devices are. When you synchronize your Dropbox, your Google, your OneDrive to your computer, that computer effectively has just become a gateway to all of your data. All they need is access to your computer and they've got free reign to essentially access your data as well. What we want to do is make sure that any malware that has entered the network, any sort of threats that have come onto your device or something of that nature, there is a proven manufacturer, vendor, such as Sophos, installed on there to be able to capture those and lock it down. If you use a vendor such as Sophos, which goes through a technology partner like us, we'll get all the notifications as well, and we'll be able to help you make sure that you action it accordingly if something ever does happen. The biggest problem with trying to do that by yourself is if you don't check the alerts, then what's the point in having it in the first place? So it's important to make sure that if you're going to have something like this, it's being monitored and being responded to accordingly. And tip number 3, educate your team. So this is such a crucial but overlooked part when it comes to the security posturing of your business. Build it into your onboarding process. When you hire someone new, you don't know what their experience is with IT beforehand, what hacks they've been a part of, what they have seen and haven't seen. And so they may potentially introduce one of the biggest vulnerabilities into your business. As we touched on, one of the biggest ways of getting hacked is through that email compromise. So what we want to make sure that we're doing is creating a security first culture where people come into your business, they learn about what are these hacks, how are they, how should they be treating them, how should they react to them, and what can they do if they're not sure about some of the concerns there. What you really should be doing is engaging with your technology provider, or more so, they should be engaging with you actually, and talking to you about how they can do a better job of educating your team about what they're seeing and how they can be responding to it, creating a process for when something like this happens, and making sure that everyone that comes into the business is caught up to speed effectively on how your business operates and what your approach is when it comes to cybersecurity. And Seed HR will definitely be able to help with that onboarding process as well. So what happens if you've implemented those tips, you still get hacked anyway, which, look, there's a saying, you either have been hacked or you're about to be hacked. You're never bulletproof, unfortunately, and that's the reality. All we can do is mitigate that risk as much as possible. The reality is that there's always potential to get hacked. But what you can do is make sure that when you do get hacked, you have an incident response plan, a process that says, we know what we're going to do if something happens to us. We know who we need to contact, we know what the process is, and we can efficiently and diligently walk through that process to make sure that we've covered off all bases, we've communicated to the right people that we need to, we've contained the systems. You know, if you have your cyber insurance, you've enacted on your cyber insurance as well, and all the necessary steps have been taken in order there. What I've done is included a QR code there, which goes to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. They actually have a template on this, albeit it's something like 40 pages and ridiculously long. It really gives you all the nuts and bolts to be able to develop an incident response plan. Obviously, you flesh it out for your size business and what's relevant to you, but what it should provide is some thought leadership around some key things that you should be considering when it comes to your incident response plan. Do you have cyber insurance? Do you have legal contact to help you understand what your responsibilities are as a managing director? Do you understand what industry you're in and what type of data that you're holding and what concerns there could be if any of that data does get breached? You may need to notify government bodies in regards to that as well. So definitely take a look at that and make sure that when you are building the plan, you involve those people in the plan. There's no point in developing the plan and not telling them that they're a key part in one of your business plans there. So cost-effective tools and resources. As I said, MFA, it is free. If you haven't got MFA turned on, it's borderline negligent, but I would always recommend make sure you do have MFA turned on. It is relatively simple to set up. And if you work with your technology provider, they may even be able to go a step further and do what's called single sign-on, which means once you sign into one secure platform, i.e. Microsoft, it will then sign you into all of your other platforms as well. So you're leveraging that really good security that you've built in that one initial place. Education. there are plenty of resources out there. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre is one of them as well. They are constantly publishing information around what they're seeing, new trends that are out there. It's a good idea to subscribe to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and it gives you an opportunity just to see and maintain up-to-date information on what's happening. Although I will also say with education, reach out to your technology provider. It's a key part of what we do. Here at Enabla, we offer lunch and learn event sessions where we'll work with the owners of the business to develop key agendas. So we cover off items that are really important to them, and we can make sure we communicate that in a Q&A fashion so that everyone gets an opportunity to be vulnerable and talk about what it is that they don't know or things that they need to learn about. It's a safe space to be able to do that. So they need that opportunity there as well. So I think I have gone through that pretty quickly, but if anyone has any questions, please throw them in the chat. Happy to talk about cybersecurity. Yeah, feel free to fire away.
Marie?
I just realized I'm already unmuted. So one of my biggest questions right now, because I'm just in a process of onboarding a VA, and due to change in direction of our business, I spent a good year without a VA. So I'm just in the process of getting a VA back on board, which is in the work that I do really, really important. But of course, it brings up the question of cyber security, cyber safety, because it has become such a norm to just hand over all your password and details to this VA, because there is this inbuilt trust. Well, they are, with a VA company, and it's just what you do. You hand over the password so that she can log into your Canva, to your emails, to your, to support you in your business. And to me, there's always this ick of how safe is this, and she's sitting in the Philippines, and how vulnerable do I become through that? I think I'm going to leave it at that with the question.
Thank you.
That's a great question, and actually one that we come across a lot. There's two main considerations when it comes to this, right? So when you are hiring a VA overseas, the first question is, who's supplying the technology that they're going to be using? If it's the VA company and they're supplying the hardware and technology, you don't have any security on that device to necessarily know whether that device is secure. And that's where I touched on every device is essentially a gateway to your business data if you synchronize everything there. In that instance, we've often recommended that they work through a web browser only, so that they work through a web browser so that they're not syncing all their data to the workstation. So when you first engage with your VA, one of the first things I'd say is, can we manage the hardware? So they will bring the device in. Can my IT person manage it so that they can put our company security on that device, and we can manage it the same way we would as if it's in our office.
Okay.
So that protects it from a gateway perspective.
Just to understand, if I understand what you're saying, if we're speaking the same language here. So for example, if I have a shared Google folder, because I have a Google folder where I've got training programs in there. This is what you do when I finish my podcast. This is what you do to upload, download, share. So would it not be a wise idea to share that Google Drive folder? Is that what you're talking about? Or
I'm mainly touching on, so you could share it to them. That's not a problem if they access it through the web browser. If they decide to start synchronizing it down to their computer and their file explorer on their computer, for instance, you don't know what else is on that device that they're potentially sharing with your data. So that's one thing just to be conscious of and check with them.
Yeah.
The other thing you touched on around sharing passwords with them, that's where something like using a password manager can be really helpful to get around that. Because there are features that are designed for sharing with other people where you may not necessarily. So let's say you're in Keeper, for instance, is a password manager that we use. Your VA could also be in Keeper, and then you have the ability to share a password with them, and you can see if they're accessing it. You can revoke it if you need to. You can even hide the password so that they can't see the password. They can only just input it on the screen. So I would definitely recommend looking at something like that. And then
I've got
they don't.
LastPass at the moment, so I guess I can do the same thing with that. I never
Yep.
knew that. That's incredible. That in itself was worth coming here. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks,
So
Marie.
Thank you.
We've got a
perfect.
few questions in the chat. David wants to know, can you please explain the best way to protect phones, stroke laptops versus information on OneDrive? Like, is there a danger using mobiles and accessing through that platform?
Look, through mobile phones, it is a growing space that you've touched on, the security, device security, mobile device management. It is still very secure to be able to access OneDrive and those sort of data storage locations through mobile devices. But there are some, I would say, some recommendations around how you set that up. So for instance, in Microsoft, there's some security you can turn on, which makes sure that people have to use biometrics to access their company data. So third-party apps can't see any of that information. It's completely segregated almost. And we can even go as far as to say we can lock down the whole mobile device. It is a lot safer than, say, Windows and your Macs and whatnot, purely because it's not as big of a space. It is a growing space though, so I would definitely say to be conscious of it. However, at the moment, you turn on those basic security features and you'll get some fantastic collaboration opportunities using the apps on your phone there. So definitely worthwhile looking at.
Thank you. Kendall has a couple of questions. The first is, how can businesses measure the effectiveness of their current cybersecurity practices? And she uses Dashlane. No idea what that is. What do you think of Dashlane? So effectiveness, how do you measure it of your security practices, and what do you think of Dashlane?
Yep. Firstly, Dashlane, great product, fantastic product.
What does it
I
do,
love
Evan?
it. It's another password manager. I believe they only bill in USD though, and that annoyed me. So that was enough for me to leave them. So went to Keeper. But to answer your other question around how do you know what good looks like, that is such a big issue in our industry. There's so much smoke and mirrors out there because no one really fully gets the entire technical products that we are selling, cybersecurity. To be able to really assess what does good look like, or do you have good security, we often recommend doing an audit against a framework. So in Australia, we have a framework that's called the Essential 8, which basically says this is what good cybersecurity looks like. And doing an audit just shows this is what you have in place and this is what you do really well. And it really helps highlight to you where the gaps are in your business, and maybe it'll prove to you that you have really good cybersecurity, or maybe it'll expose that you're missing quite a number of recommended things. At a high level, there is the Essential 8, if you were to Google it, which would tell you what the 8 key items are at a very high level. And if you know that you're already doing some of those, then you know you're on the right track. When you want to start to get a little bit more in depth though, I'd recommend doing a proper audit with an IT company. And look, your existing IT company should be able to help with that, but it is usually a project on its own to do it, so it can start to get costly. But for businesses where they're wanting to take cybersecurity to be a priority for the next year and moving forward, doing an audit really helps set a baseline, and it's worthwhile investing in because it's really going to inform all your future cybersecurity strategies and discussions, and you can really start to see what changes have you actually done, and you have a reference point to know where the value is, what have you invested in, and are you on the right track essentially. So I would definitely recommend something like that.
That mention of audits has answered Lois's question, I think. What does a cybersecurity audit entail? And you're saying that starting point is using that Essential 8. And Christy asked, are there steps you need to take before you can get cyber insurance? Because I know that's another hot topic. Is it beneficial if you do your audit first and you have some policies in place before you then get that cybersecurity insurance?
Yeah, so with cybersecurity insurance, it is getting harder and harder to get it every year, and the list of requirements is getting longer and longer as well. So I always look at insurance as a reactive measure. I prefer to not get hacked in the first place, to be honest. So if you were to weigh up the investment between cyber insurance or investing in preventative measures that would stop them from getting in the first place, I'd always start with preventative measures. And quite often, the cyber insurance will require you to have a number of those preventative measures anyway. If you've done a cyber insurance audit and you're able to show that you have really good security posture, then some insurance brokers will reflect that in their policy, and you may be able to find some efficiencies and cost savings in there. However, I don't believe it's going to be a major saving because the industry is still evolving, and over the past couple of years, there's been a number of insurance providers pull out of supplying cyber insurance because they realized that they weren't pricing it right. They didn't fully understand the technical products they were selling, and they were basically losing money on it. So now there's only really a select few which are doing it, and it's becoming quite expensive and quite challenging. So definitely focus on the preventative measures. I would definitely recommend.
And you provide those audit services, Evan?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So we would happy to work alongside your existing IT provider, or if you don't have an IT provider, we can walk the business owner through what we would need to do and what that would look like. And if it turns into a long-term relationship, well, that's even better.
And we have another Evan. Hi, Evan. How important is it to regularly change hardware passwords, laptops, phones, tablets, etc.?
Look, the stance on changing passwords, best practice was always, every 90 days to be changing passwords. There's a few different, I'd say, views on this, where the view on what password you use has changed from changing it every 90 days to really making sure you have a stronger password or passphrase, I'll say. If it's really long, unique, has a number of different characters, so special characters, uppercase, lowercase, mixed into it, then you're going to be relatively safe with what you're doing. When it comes to having an extreme cyber security posturing, a lot of those actually recommend that no one actually knows the admin password at all, and it's a randomly generated just-in-time access, and you get quite complex when you start going down that route. But definitely just focus on, instead of having something easy you can remember that you change frequently, just focus on having something really strong, complex, and unique to begin with, and you'll be much better off. And that's Microsoft's stance on it now as well.
Christy wondered, you talked about training your team on cybersecurity during onboarding. How often should you be retraining? And I know this is a space that's evolving all the time. So what are your thoughts around that?
So education in cybersecurity, there's a few different ways that you can undergo your education, right? So there's the in-person events, which, is probably what most people think we're talking about, which is a great way to do it. But there's also what they call simulated phishing attacks in education, which is software-based education. So for instance, Enabla Technology and other IT providers would provide this piece of software where when people onboard into the business, one of the first things that they will do is undergo a level of software-based education to bring them up to scratch. And then they will mix in with everyone else, where they will be a part of what we call our campaigns, where over a year or two of a scheduled campaign, everyone will, get tried and tested with a simulated phishing attack, education, and that will generally inform what our lunch and learn events need to look like. So if we're seeing a lot of people are really struggling with a particular trend when it comes to cybersecurity, that's where we want to focus our engagements with staff members, so that they do go hand in hand.
Talk of phishing with a PH. Kate wants to know, are there top ways or tips to recognize phishing and other social engineering attacks? And I guess if you do the training module and you get those regular ones, you might, but have you got any top tips on how you know when an email is dodgy or not, or whatever else it might be?
It's definitely getting a lot harder, especially with AI in place now. A lot of the text that they're using is, you say, they're able to pick up sentiment and a lot of things if they know and they've seen previous email chains. So it's getting quite scary with what they're able to imitate. But definitely looking at the domain name. So when you see an email come into your inbox, you're going to see the display name, which is more often than not, that's the name that they're trying to pretend they are. And next to that is their email address. And what you should be looking at is the respond to email address and seeing, is that a legitimate email address that's coming in to the business? Because it is so challenging, we do try to focus on a few behavioral points around how you treat these emails as well. So when you get an email like that, you should really be questioning yourself, am I expecting an email like this? Would I normally receive an email like this? If not, and this goes back to that cybersecurity culture, you should be questioning it and saying, well, I'm going to assume that it's malicious. I'm going to assume that there's something wrong with it. I'm going to check before I action anything around it. You know, Esther wouldn't normally ask me to buy her 1,000 gift cards, but in this instance, maybe, but no, definitely focus on that behavioral side of it. And, you know, for instance, if people are emailing you around change of bank account details and those sort of things, they should always, in this business process, be communicated over the phone as well with a trusted contact from the business.
And we've had clients ring us about, what do? We just had a staff member who has had that happen. They've lost $1,000 of the business's money. You know, should we discipline them? So, it's a whole issue if it happens. Amy, great question from you. I have a remote workforce using iPads and often using public Wi-Fi to complete work. How can this be managed or controlled better for security purposes?
So there's, I suppose, two real options I would recommend. Either iPads, look at putting in place your own SIM cards on the iPads so they're not using a public Wi-Fi network. But as well too, with iPads, there's a feature in all mobile devices called mobile device management. And what that essentially means is we're able to implement a lot of the security features and controls, which we would now put onto all of our workstations out there. We're able to make sure that those iPads reflect the same level of security so that other people that are in the public network aren't able to interfere with that iPad, and or physical as well. If someone takes the iPad, they're not able to access key business data as well. So I'd definitely be recommending what's called mobile device management for your iPads.
Great, thank you. Interesting question, because half of our team use Macs and the other half don't. I've been previously told that Apple Macs are more secure and difficult to hack compared to other brands, e.g. Windows. Is this the case? If so, why?
No, not really. It's most of the business world still operates on Windows. It's probably shifting a little bit, shifting the balance, but it's still majority Windows. So put your business hat on, I guess. If you're a hacker, you're going to spend your time trying to get into Windows because that's where most of the people are. That's where you'll get the ROI. That's really the main reason why Windows is so much more susceptible to hacks, because that's where the market is.
Yeah.
With Macs, go back 5-10 years, a lot of people didn't even really put antivirus on their Macs. Now that there's a lot more of a growing population of MacBooks out there, we're starting to see more malicious attacks on the Mac OS operating system. So, and a lot more people are conscious of that, and now they're really starting to follow suit with what Windows devices are doing. So I think they should be treated equally because they're both just as susceptible as each other. There may be some balances in there, but definitely, something to be conscious of.
Is there another question, an antivirus system you would recommend for Macs?
Yes, same one I'd recommend for Windows. It's called Sophos, Sophos. We use Sophos for all of our email security, for all of our device security, and all of our networking security as well. They're a fantastic brand. And I'd highly recommend going through a partner. If you go down the route of doing Sophos, as I mentioned, if they have alerts, it's important that someone actually checks them and knows how to action them, because there's heaps of jargon and it doesn't make sense to most people.
We use Sophos, and today I tried to get on the website of a pub and it wouldn't let me. So I had to ask Evan if he would please let me go onto a tobacco and alcohol site, which was quite amusing. Evan, is there not Evan, the other Evan in the chat, Evan Gilchrist, is there best practice on how to provide billing details to circumvent any intervention attacks that may occur?
The way that this is, I suppose the industry is really shifting, is billing details aren't even encouraged to be on invoices anymore from a data governance perspective. We're really encouraging people to start, when they onboard a customer, there should be some sort of onboarding process, an onboarding form, so that they're verified, all the details are verified together all at once, and they're captured in the system. When it comes to updating billing details or other critical information, that would really, you'd start to be thinking about, well, what's our change management process then? Who has the approval ability for that? Who can provide that information, and how should we be verifying it and updating it in our system? So I always say a phone call to that trusted person in the business that you know is the best way to do it. But, you know, when you're dealing with larger businesses and there's multiple people in there, it obviously can get challenging. When it comes to sharing those forms for if you're adding someone onto an account with your business, we often recommend it's better to upload those forms directly into your SharePoint or OneDrive, you know, shared folder to them, rather than transmitting it via email as well. Once they're on your account, then the BSB and account details on your invoices, on the PDFs, shouldn't even really matter after that.
Thank you. Evan, again, I get a lot of VPN ads saying they enhance security. Are VPNs something in the business IT landscape? Is a VPN a virtual private network?
It is, and we use VPNs less and less now. And look, VPNs, those ads, all they're really doing is moving you to another geographic location. Is there any security benefit to it? Not really. You're just bypassing, you know, Netflix and the geo blocking that comes with it. So, from a security point of view, there's really not much, because your internet connection is still going out through your internet service provider, i.e. Telstra or whoever it is, and it's still going through an NBN network in order to go out to via your VPN network and back out. It's a bit of a gimmick, to be honest. You're better off actually going the other way with your security and in Microsoft, which geo blocks anyone outside of Australia from being able to access all of your information using geo blocking. So VPNs are a little bit of a thing of the past at the moment.
Okay. Lois, can you recommend any low cost or free training that people with staff can complete?
Low cost or free? Look, the software that I talked about before, I would suggest is relatively low cost for software-based training, because I believe it costs less than $10 a user per month, so it's relatively cheap. And that way it's automated, it's consistent, and it's deliberate in how it is that you're doing it. Otherwise, from a free perspective, there's lots of resources out there, as I touched on, which, you know, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre is probably one of the better government-funded sources out there. It's all legitimate and fact-checked, and, you know, would provide you the best sort of information to keep you up to date.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any more questions for Evan? I assume the $10 a month is not linked to a partner yet who can read the alerts.
It would normally, so is that from the device security perspective? How it would normally work is, you know, you pay around $10 a month, it would get, your partner would also get the alerts, and it all depends on your relationship with them. If you have a dual and charge relationship, they might reach out to you and say, this has come up, do you want us to action it and bill for it? And, you know, that's completely up to you. Or you may be on a managed services relationship, which is that fixed fee arrangement where essentially anything that comes in, they're just going to action it and get it done. So it really boils down to what type of engagement you're looking for in your business.
Kate wants to know, are you aware of the New South Wales TAFE cybersecurity training, and is it any good?
Yes, I am. I looked at it actually, but I didn't actually do it because I'm currently in the middle of another degree at the moment. So I wanted to still have a life outside of it, but definitely I believe it is free. It's well government funded, so definitely worthwhile looking at TAFE down that path. And there is always, I regularly check government funding as well, and cybersecurity is definitely becoming, or is, but will definitely be growing, their investment around it and what information is out there and courses out there that people can access. There's even talks of subsidies related to tax incentives, and potentially we've even had cash back in our pocket as well for some investment to do with cybersecurity. So as and when those things come up, we will obviously bring that up to our clients, and it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation around making sure we're secure.
Are there any final questions before we let everybody know how they can get in touch with you if they have any more burning questions after the webinar? Anyone? No?
Going once, going twice.
So this is how you can get in touch with Evan. This will be on the recording and the slides. So there's his email, mobile, and their website. Thank you so much, Evan, for sharing so generously all your knowledge on this topic. And I know it's a topic that, you know, you could just take one cybersecurity topic and it would probably take an hour. I think the key things for me in terms of takeaways was I loved the house analogy. It is no different to securing your house. I feel super confident, you know, in terms of the data that we work with our clients with at Seed HR and working with you and having Sophos. But we also have just decided to put in a policy around our own data protocols and really up the education of our own team and our clients as well. So thank you so much, Evan. Lots of food for thought there. If you enjoyed this webinar, our next webinar is all about the numbers, my favourite topic, not. Nikki is our fabulous accountant. She is also English, I must confess. And she's going to take us through some golden rules for small business success. And that will be on the 3rd of June. So I think that leaves me to say thank you so much to everyone for attending. We hope you found it valuable and informative. And as I said, keep an eye out for our webinar series. We'll do them every other month. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you all.